After seeing the amount of information that can be pulled from the internal site search reports, you may assume there's a lot of work to integrate analytics in with your site, but actually configuring internal site search couldn't be much easier. First step, you need to actually have a site search on your site. If you don't, Google will, of course, suggest their own, but it is not a requirement. Google Analytics site search reports work with all kinds of site search engines from lots of different vendors, so don't think you have to have a Google one. Now that said, if you need one, the Google one works very well, and they offer a free version with ads or an ad-free one for just $100, which is quite reasonable considering a full-blown custom search engine can run into 6 figures per year depending on the volume and features. It's not a requirement, but they do offer a free and an inexpensive version if you want to get up and started quickly. Okay, assuming you have one on your site, the next step is simply to go to your site and do a search. So let's do that. Go ahead and put a search term in of something you can easily spot up in the URL. So in my case, here I'm simply putting in my name, and I'm going to do a search. And what we're going to do is look through this long string of gobbledygook here, and we're trying to find that term. Okay, here it is. I can easily spot that. And what we're really looking for is the variable that holds this particular term. See, what we've got up here are a series of query string parameters. And query string parameters are just things that tell the site extra information. So the page here is that this is a search result. And then I have this question mark. And the question mark separates the address of the page from all the other extra information that we're sending along back. Each one of these bits of information is separated by an ampersand. And we follow this pattern where we have a variable name that holds the variable, an equal sign, and then the actual data. So in our case here, we have a Q. Q is the variable that holds the information. It is the query string parameter, and then the value of that parameter is the search phrase. So in my case, Corey Koberg. In other words, every time we see this Q equals, it's going to be followed by the thing that was searched on. That's how analytics knows what to look for. It knows what the search terms are. So all we need to do is tell analytics where to look in this string. In this case, we would tell it to look after the Q. Now, it's not always going to be a Q. For example, if we went over to Yahoo, we can see they use a different one. If I typed in my term here and did a search, we would see that they hold their search term in a P. It may be different for your site. The only way to know is simply to go to your site, type it in, and look. Okay, now that we've figured out the name of our variable, we're going to go ahead and tell analytics that. We come back here, click on Analytics Settings, and select the profile that we want to add site search reports to. And note this is on a per profile basis, not the entire account. What this means is that if you have multiple search engines on your site, you could potentially set up a particular profile for each one, and then perhaps an overall profile that combines them all. In this case, we're going to add it to the primary profile by clicking Edit. And then the main website profile information, we're going to click Edit again. We're going to select that we do want to track site search. And what we need is that query string parameter. What is that variable that holds it? So we just simply put a Q here and tell it to look for anywhere it sees in the URL that has a Q to grab the next thing that comes after it, which is going to be our search term. Now we have a few other options here. The first one here is whether or not we want to strip these query string parameters out of the URL after it's done processing. That way, all these different search parameters won't show up when we look at this page in our content reports. And this is just a matter of personal preference, whether or not you want to see those search query parameters in those reports or not. Generally speaking, I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, we should strip those out because we've already grabbed the information we need from those to pull into our reports. And so we can just avoid some clutter there and reduce the number of overall URLs in our account. The next question is, do we use categories for site search? Now, in our case, we didn't, but in some cases you might. For example, if we were to go over here to barnesandnoble.com, we have the ability to put the keyword search in here, just like we did in the other example. But we also have the ability to go and select categories. So let's say, for example, if I selected a category of music and just typed in our same keyword here and click search. Now, if we go up to the URL, we can quickly see that in their case, WRD is what holds the search term. But they also have this category parameter, store equals music. So in their case, store is the query string parameter that holds the category type, which is music in this case. So if we wanted to include that in our site search reports, we would say, yes, we do use categories, and we could actually put in the word store, which is the variable that holds that value, and we have the option whether or not to keep that in or strip that out, just like we did before. Now, in my particular profile, I don't use categories, so I'm going to go ahead and select no, save changes, and you're done. Now, when I go back here and actually view the reports for that particular profile, when I come down to content, I will now see site searches here, and those reports will be available to me. I won't yet have any values here because, like almost everything in Google Analytics, it's only going to start from the time I select it forward. In other words, it's not going to go back in history and look over all the different searches that took place before now. It's going to count from now forward. And there's only one caveat here. In the rare case that you go up and do a search and look in the URL and find that your term is not there, this means that your search engine doesn't reflect the term back into the URL. To fix this, first talk with your system admin to see if it's possible to change that. Or as an alternative, you can fire a virtual page view that contains the term. And that last one is an advanced JavaScript-based technique that's outside the scope of this class, but any of the Google Analytics certified partners should be able to help you in a very short amount of time. Configuring site search is a relatively easy task that opens up a world of reports that are some of the best insights we have into actual customer intent. And I highly recommend you take the time to do this for your profiles.